The rain hammered against our kitchen window like an impatient salesman, and I watched my wife Lena shake droplets from her designer coat with the practiced grace of someone who'd never met a puddle she couldn't sidestep. 3 days away on another business trip, and she looked fresh as morning coffee, which should have been my first clue something was rotten in suburban paradise. "Miss me, honey?" she asked, that smile spreading across her face like butter on toast. Too smooth, too perfect. "Like a migraine, Mrs. Aspirin," I replied, gesturing toward the small black box mounted near our front door. "Hope you don't mind the new addition. Had some security concerns while you were gone." Her eyes flicked to the camera, and for just a moment, maybe half a heartbeat, her smile faltered. Bingo. Security concerns? Lena set down her briefcase with the careful precision of a bomb disposal expert. "What kind of concerns, Evan?" I could smell a lie faster than a gas leak, and my marriage was about to blow sky high. But I wasn't ready to light the match just yet. "Oh, you know how it is. Mrs. Fitch next door mentioned some suspicious activity. Strange cars and driveways, people coming and going at odd hours." I leaned against the counter, studying her face like a mechanic examining a faulty engine. Figured we could use some extra eyes around here. Lena laughed, but it sounded like ice cubes rattling in an empty glass. "You and your paranoia. I swear, sometimes I think you watch too many crime shows." "Funny thing about crime shows," I said, opening the refrigerator and pretending to search for something. "The criminals always think they're smarter than everyone else, right up until they get caught." She went upstairs to shower, and I heard the water running, the same shower where she'd probably washed off the scent of another man just 3 days ago. "See, I'm not just your average suburban husband with a tool shed and a mortgage. I'm a mechanical engineer with 20 years of experience making things work, and more importantly, making things stop working when I want them to." While Lena was scrubbing away her sins, I checked the app on my phone. The security system wasn't just for show. My buddy Tom runs a private security firm, and he'd helped me install something special. Every room in the house now had eyes and ears, and the best part? The system was completely legal. Our house, our right to monitor it. But the real magic happened 2 days ago, when I'd made a little visit to Lena's law office. Amazing how easy it is to walk into a building when you're carrying a toolbox and wearing a uniform that says tech support. Even more amazing how simple it is to clone someone's phone when they leave it charging at their desk during lunch. I'd spent the last 48 hours reading every text message, every email, every digital breadcrumb my loving wife had scattered across cyberspace. And what a feast of information it had been. Miles Richardson, senior partner at Lena's firm, married, 2 kids, drives a BMW that costs more than most people's houses. And apparently he'd been mentoring my wife in ways that definitely weren't covered in the employee handbook. The shower stopped running upstairs. I quickly closed the monitoring app and opened a news website, arranging my face into the expression of a man reading about sports scores instead of planning the most elaborate revenge in suburban history. "Evan?" Lena's voice drifted down from the bedroom. "Could you bring me a glass of wine? It's been such a stressful trip." "Sure thing, sweetheart," I called back, already reaching for the bottle of her favorite Chardonnay. "Rough conference?" "You have no idea." Oh, but I did have an idea. A very detailed idea, complete with hotel receipts, restaurant bills, and a particularly interesting video from the security camera at Marconi's bar downtown, the same bar where my wife had been networking with Miles while I'd been home eating frozen dinners and watching Netflix. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I poured the wine and climbed the stairs, each step measured and deliberate. Lena was sitting at her vanity, brushing her hair with long, careful strokes. She looked beautiful. She always looked beautiful. That was part of the problem. Beautiful people get away with things the rest of us never could. "Here you go," I said, handing her the glass. She took a sip and sighed contentedly. "You're so good to me, Evan. I don't know what I'd do without you." "Probably find someone with more money," I said with a grin that felt like it might crack my face. She laughed, a real laugh this time, not the artificial one from downstairs. "Don't be silly. Money isn't everything." "No," I agreed, settling onto the edge of our bed. "Sometimes it's about power, status, the thrill of getting away with something." Lena's hand paused mid-brush. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing specific. Just thinking about human nature, how people justify the things they do." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our perfectly manicured lawn, our perfectly normal neighborhood, our perfectly fraudulent life. Take cheating, for example. I bet most people who cheat convince themselves they have good reasons. They're not getting what they need at home. They deserve better. They're not really hurting anyone. The brushing stopped completely. That's a strange thing to think about, Lena said carefully. Is it? I don't know. Seems pretty universal to me, the human capacity for self-deception. I turned back to face her, and her reflection in the vanity mirror looked pale. But the funny thing is, the truth always comes out eventually. Technology makes it almost impossible to keep secrets anymore. I walked over and kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her expensive shampoo. Anyway, I'm glad you're home safe. Sweet dreams, honey. As I left the bedroom, I could feel her eyes on my back like laser beams. Let her wonder, let her worry. The game was just beginning, and I held all the cards. Downstairs in my workshop, I opened my laptop and reviewed the evidence I'd collected. Text messages that would make a sailor blush. Hotel reservations made on the company credit card. Photos from Miles's social media showing him at the exact restaurant where he'd taken my wife for their romantic dinner. But my favorite piece of evidence was the video from Marconi's bar. Crystal clear footage of Lena and Miles in a corner booth, hands intertwined across the table, sharing the kind of intimate conversation that definitely wasn't about quarterly reports. The timestamp showed 9:47 p.m. last Tuesday, the same night Lena had called me to say she was exhausted and going to bed early. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. They thought they were running a con? I'd invented the game. Tomorrow, the real fun would begin. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, which matched my mood perfectly. Lena was already gone by the time I dragged myself out of bed. Early meeting, she'd said in the note stuck to the coffee maker. Right. Early meeting with Miles, more likely. I made myself breakfast and settled in at the kitchen table with my laptop. The beauty of working as a freelance consultant is that I can set my own schedule, which meant I had plenty of time to dedicate to my new favorite hobby, destroying my wife's carefully constructed lies. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom. Coffee? Got some toys to show you? 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from my oldest friend in a diner that specialized in grease and gossip. Tom looked like Central Casting's idea of an ex-cop. Thick shoulders, gray mustache, eyes that missed nothing. He'd been my best man at my wedding, and now he was about to help me plan its funeral. So, he said, sliding a small device across the table. This little beauty will clone any smartphone in about 30 seconds. Just needs to be within 3 feet of the target. I picked up the device. It looked like an ordinary phone charger. Legal? Gray area. Don't ask, don't tell. Tom stirred his coffee thoughtfully. You sure you want to go down this road, Evan? Once you start pulling threads, the whole sweater unravels. The sweater's already unraveling. I'm just deciding whether to knit a new one or burn down the yarn store. Tom chuckled. Always were dramatic. What's your play? I outlined my plan while Tom listened with the patience of a man who'd heard worse confessions. By the time I finished, he was grinning like a kid with a new toy. You know what? I like it. Poetic justice with a side of public humiliation. Count me in. We shook hands across the table, and I felt something shift inside me, like a gear clicking into place. No more Mr. Nice Guy, no more turning the other cheek. If Lena wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real player looked like. The law offices of Richardson, Burke, and Associates occupied 3 floors of downtown's most prestigious building. Glass and steel, and the kind of understated elegance that screamed money. I'd been here exactly twice. Once for the firm's Christmas party, once for some spouse appreciation dinner where I'd felt like a tourist in a foreign country. Today, I was here on a mission. The lobby was all marble and leather, with a receptionist who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. I approached her desk with my most charming smile. Hi there. I'm Evan Mitchell, Lena Mitchell's husband. I'm supposed to meet her for lunch, but I think I'm a little early. The receptionist, her nameplate read Ashley, brightened immediately. Oh, Mr. Mitchell. Lena talks about you all the time. She's in a meeting right now, but I'm sure she'll be done soon. Would you like to wait? That would be great, thanks. She gestured toward a seating area near the elevator bank. Perfect. From there, I could see the entire lobby and most of the hallway leading to the offices. I settled into a leather chair with a magazine and activated the phone cloner Tom had given me. I didn't have to wait long. At exactly 11:30, the elevator opened and out walked Miles Richardson himself. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. He had the kind of confident swagger that comes from never having to worry about mortgage payments or grocery bills. Behind him, laughing at something he'd said, was my wife. They weren't touching, too smart for that in the office, but there was an intimacy in the way they moved together, a synchronization that spoke of time spent in close quarters, very close quarters. As they passed my hiding spot, I heard Miles say, Dinner tonight? I know a place. I'd like that, Lena replied. But I should probably get home at a reasonable hour. Evan's been acting strange lately. Strange how? Paranoid. Asking questions. He installed security cameras while I was away. Miles stopped walking. Cameras? It's probably nothing. You know how men get when they feel insecure. They continued toward Miles's office, their voices fading. But I'd heard enough. More than enough. I stood up and walked casually toward the reception desk, making sure to pass close enough to Miles for the cloner to do its work. The device vibrated once. Mission accomplished. Actually, I told Ashley, I just remembered I have an appointment across town. Could you tell Lena I'll catch up with her later? Of course, Mr. Mitchell. Have a wonderful day. If only she knew how wonderful it was about to become. Back in my car, I activated the cloned phone and nearly laughed out loud at what I found. Miles Richardson might be a successful lawyer, but he had the digital security awareness of a goldfish. His text messages read like a romance novel written by someone with no imagination and terrible judgment. The most recent exchange with Lena made my teeth ache. Miles. Can't stop thinking about last night. Lena. Me neither. When can we do it again? Miles. Soon. Very soon. This weekend? Lena. Evan's visiting his brother. Perfect timing. News to me. I wasn't visiting anyone this weekend, but apparently I was about to develop sudden plans. I scrolled through weeks of messages, each one more incriminating than the last. Hotel reservations, restaurant recommendations, complaints about their respective spouses. And through it all, the gradual escalation from professional flirtation to full-blown affair. But the real treasure was buried deeper in Miles's phone. Financial records, client information, and most interesting of all, evidence of some creative accounting that would make the IRS very unhappy. Miles Richardson wasn't just an adulterer. He was a tax cheat with a gambling problem and a cocaine habit that would shock his country club buddies. I sat in my car, scrolling through years of digital evidence, and felt something cold and sharp crystallize in my chest. These people had been playing me for a fool, laughing at the dumb husband while they lived their exciting double life. Well, the dumb husband was about to get very smart, very fast. That evening, Lena came home with Chinese takeout and a guilty conscience disguised as cheerfulness. Thought we could have a nice dinner together, she said, unpacking containers of sweet and sour pork. I feel like we haven't been connecting lately. Connecting, I repeated, accepting the plate she handed me. Interesting choice of words. We ate in relative silence, the kind of comfortable quiet that had once felt natural and now felt like a minefield. Every bite tasted like betrayal, but I kept my expression neutral. So, I said eventually, I was thinking of visiting Glenn this weekend. Haven't seen my brother in months. Lena's chopsticks paused halfway to her mouth. This weekend? Problem with that? No, of course not. It's just sudden. Spontaneous, I corrected. Life's too short to plan everything in advance. She nodded, but I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. Already planning her weekend with Miles, no doubt. Already composing the text message that would tell him the coast was clear. After dinner, I helped with the dishes and made a show of looking up bus schedules to Glen City. Lena watched from the corner of her eye, probably calculating how long she'd have the house to herself. You know what? I said suddenly. Maybe I'll drive instead. More flexibility that way. Good idea, she agreed quickly. Too quickly. Later that night, after Lena had fallen asleep, I crept down to my workshop and fired up my laptop. Time to set the trap. I started with social media. Miles Richardson had accounts on every platform, and thanks to his cloned phone, I now had access to all of them. His Facebook page was a monument to middle-aged narcissism, photos of expensive dinners, exotic vacations, and humble brags about his professional accomplishments. But his private messages told a different story, conversations with bookies, arrangements with dealers, and most damning of all, a thread with someone named Tony about moving money through offshore accounts. I screenshot everything, organized it into folders, and uploaded it all to a secure cloud server. Then I created several anonymous email accounts and began crafting my masterpiece. The first email went to Miles's wife, Sandra. I'd met her a few times at firm events, a quiet woman who seemed perpetually overshadowed by her husband's booming personality. The subject line read, "Information you need to see about your husband." The second email went to the Internal Revenue Service. They love anonymous tips about tax evasion, especially when those tips come with detailed documentation. The third email was addressed to the State Bar Association. Lawyers who steal from client accounts tend to lose their licenses pretty quickly. But my favorite email went to Miles himself, sent from an account that couldn't be traced back to me. The subject line was simple. We need to talk. The message was even simpler. I know what you've been doing, all of it. Check your bank account. I didn't actually touch his bank account. That would be illegal. But I didn't need to. Paranoid people do most of the work themselves. By the time I finished, it was nearly 3 a.m. I climbed the stairs quietly, slipped back into bed beside my sleeping wife, and smiled at the ceiling. Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. Friday morning dawned bright and clear, which felt like the universe's idea of irony. Lena was already in the shower when I woke up, humming some tune I didn't recognize. Probably something Miles had introduced her to. He struck me as the type who'd have opinions about jazz or classical music, the kind of cultural pretensions that impress people like my wife. I made coffee and checked my phone. 3 missed calls from an unknown number, all logged between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. Miles was having trouble sleeping, apparently. Good. You're up early, Lena said, appearing in the kitchen with her hair still damp. She was wearing the blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, the one she claimed was too fancy for everyday wear. Couldn't sleep, I said truthfully. Excited about seeing Glenn, I guess. She poured herself coffee and added cream with the careful precision of a chemist. What time are you leaving? Soon as I finish this cup. Want to beat the traffic? Lena nodded, but her attention was elsewhere. Her phone had buzzed, and she was reading a text with the kind of focus usually reserved for legal briefs. Her face went through a series of micro-expressions, confusion, concern, and finally something that might have been panic. Everything okay? I asked innocently. Fine, she said quickly, shoving the phone into her purse. Just work stuff. I finished my coffee and made a show of packing an overnight bag. Lena watched from the kitchen doorway, her phone buzzing constantly. She was trying to ignore it, but I could see the effort it was taking. You sure you're okay? I asked, shouldering my bag. You look stressed. I'm fine, Evan. Have a good trip. Tell Glenn I said hello. I kissed her cheek. She smelled like expensive perfume and desperation, and headed for the garage. But instead of driving to my brother's house 3 hours away, I drove exactly 6 blocks to the parking garage behind the old movie theater. From there, I had a perfect view of our house and complete access to the security system I'd installed. The camera feeds loaded on my phone just as Lena's car pulled out of our driveway. She was talking on her phone, gesturing wildly with her free hand. Even from a distance, I could see she was agitated. I switched to the audio feed from the car. Another little gift from Tom's security company. The conversation was already in progress. Don't understand, Lena was saying. What do you mean your accounts are frozen? Miles's voice came through the speaker, tight with barely controlled panic. Someone sent information to Sandra. Bank records, photos, everything. She's filed for divorce and gotten a court order freezing our assets. Photos of what? Us, Lena, at the hotel, at Marconi's. Someone's been watching us. There was a long pause. When Lena spoke again, her voice was smaller, more frightened. Do you think it's Evan? I don't know. Maybe. Christ, this is a disaster. The Bar Association called this morning. They're opening an investigation into my client accounts. Your client accounts? Miles, what aren't you telling me? Another pause, longer this time. There might be some irregularities. Nothing serious, just some creative bookkeeping. But if they start digging... Creative bookkeeping? You mean you've been stealing? It's not stealing. It's borrowing. I always pay it back. Lena's voice rose an octave. Are you insane? Do you know what this could do to my career? To both our careers? Calm down. We can handle this. We just need to be smart. Smart? Smart would have been not sleeping with a married colleague. Smart would have been not embezzling from client accounts. The line went quiet except for the sound of Lena's car engine and her ragged breathing. Where are you going? Miles asked finally. Home. I need to think. Don't do anything stupid, Lena. We're in this together now. The call ended, and I watched Lena's car make a U-turn and head back toward our house. I gave her a 5-minute head start, then drove home myself. She was in the living room when I walked in, sitting on the couch with her head in her hands. Her phone lay on the coffee table like a loaded weapon. Forget something? She asked without looking up. Yeah, I said, setting down my bag. Forgot to mention that I changed my mind about visiting Glenn. Now she looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her carefully applied makeup smudged. What? Decided I'd rather spend the weekend with my wife. Crazy idea, right? Lena stared at me for a long moment, and I could practically see her brain working, trying to calculate how much I knew and how much trouble she was in. Evan, she said carefully, we need to talk. Do we? About what? About us. About our marriage. About... She gestured helplessly at the air between us. I sat down in the chair across from her, close enough to see the fear in her eyes, but far enough away to avoid any sudden movements. I'm listening. I think we've been growing apart. I think maybe we both need some space to figure out what we want. Space, I repeated. Interesting timing for that revelation. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery. The first image was a screenshot of her text conversation with Miles from 2 days ago. I held it up so she could see the screen. Her face went white. Evan, I can explain. Can you? Because I'd love to hear the explanation for this. I swiped to the next screenshot. Or this one. Or my personal favorite. I showed her the photo from Marconi's bar. This artistic masterpiece. Lena's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. How did you? Get these? Technology, sweetheart. Amazing what you can accomplish with the right equipment and a little patience. I put the phone away and leaned back in my chair. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Evan, please, it's not what you think. Really? Because what I think is that my wife has been having an affair with her boss for the past 4 months. What I think is that she's been lying to me, stealing from our joint accounts to pay for hotels and dinners, and planning to leave me for a man who's currently under investigation for embezzlement. I smiled pleasantly. But please, tell me how wrong I am. Tears started rolling down her cheeks. Real tears, not the crocodile variety she used when she wanted something. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. Repeatedly. In expensive hotels that I helped pay for. Miles said he loved me. He said he was going to leave Sandra. And you believed him? A man who steals from his own clients told you he loved you, and you thought that was a solid foundation for a relationship? Lena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing mascara across her cheek. You don't understand. You've never understood. I needed someone who could appreciate me, someone who shared my ambitions. Someone with money, I interrupted. Let's be honest about what this was really about. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, and the sound surprised both of us with its bitterness. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been having this conversation before you started screwing around. Fair would have been asking for a divorce instead of making me look like an idiot in front of everyone we know. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, and now we have to deal with the consequences. Lena looked around the room like she was seeing it for the first time. The furniture we'd picked out together, the photos from our honeymoon, the life we'd built that she'd been so eager to throw away. What do you want? She asked quietly. What do I want? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our perfectly normal neighborhood where perfectly normal people were living their perfectly normal lives. I want my wife back. But she's been gone for months, hasn't she? What I've got instead is a stranger who looks like her but lies like a politician and cheats like a card sharp. Evan, I want you to pack a bag, I said without turning around. I want you to go stay with Miles or your mother or whoever will take you in. And I want you to think very carefully about what you're going to say when people start asking questions. Questions? Now I did turn around, and I let her see exactly what I thought of her and her choices. Oh, sweetheart, you don't think this is going to stay private, do you? Miles's wife already knows. The Bar Association is investigating, and I have enough evidence to make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of person you really are. The color drained from her face. You wouldn't. Try me. We stared at each other across the room, and I saw the moment when she finally understood that the man she'd married, the patient, forgiving, turn-the-other-cheek husband, was gone. In his place was someone harder, someone who'd learned to play the game by her rules. I'll pack a bag, she said finally. Good choice. I watched her climb the stairs to our bedroom, her shoulders bowed like she was carrying a weight too heavy for her frame. Part of me, a small, stubborn part that remembered our wedding day and the promises we'd made, wanted to call her back, to find some way to fix what was broken. But that part was outnumbered by the larger part that was already planning phase 2 of my revenge. Because if Lena thought this was over, she was about to learn just how creative a mechanical engineer could be when properly motivated. The real fun was just beginning. Lena left on Saturday morning with 2 suitcases and what remained of her dignity. She didn't say where she was going, and I didn't ask. Frankly, I didn't care as long as it was far enough away to give me room to work. The house felt different without her. Bigger somehow, like a stage after the actors have left. I walked through the rooms we'd shared, seeing them with new eyes. The kitchen where she'd lied about her business trips. The living room where she'd taken calls from Miles while I watched television 3 feet away. The bedroom where she'd come home smelling like another man's cologne and kissed me goodnight. Every room held memories that now felt contaminated, like looking at old photographs and noticing the person in the background who turned out to be a murderer. But I didn't have time for nostalgia. I had work to do. My first stop was the bank. Amazing how much easier it is to manage your finances when you don't have someone draining the accounts for romantic getaways. I transferred everything from our joint accounts into a new account that only I could access, leaving exactly enough in the old account to cover the mortgage and utilities. Let Lena figure out how to fund her new lifestyle without my help. My second stop was Tom's office. He was waiting for me with coffee and a grin that suggested he'd been looking forward to this conversation. "So," he said, settling behind his desk, "how'd she take it?" "About as well as you'd expect. She's moved out." "And Richardson?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the latest developments. Miles's social media accounts had gone dark. His office voicemail was full, and according to the local news website, Richardson, Burke and Associates was cooperating fully with an ongoing investigation into financial irregularities. Tom whistled low. "You don't mess around, do you?" "I'm just getting started." I leaned forward in my chair. "I need a favor." "Name it." "I want to know everything about Miles Richardson, where he goes, who he sees, what he eats for breakfast, and I want to know about everyone in Lena's social circle, her work friends, her gym buddies, her book club, everyone." Tom raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot of surveillance. You sure you want to go down this road?" "I'm sure." "Okay, but it's going to cost you." "How much?" He named a figure that would have made the old me wince. The new me just nodded. "Done." "Cool, all right then." Tom opened his laptop and started typing. "Give me 48 hours, and I'll have enough dirt to bury both of them." I spent the rest of the weekend planning, not just the immediate revenge that was already in motion, but the long-term campaign. Lena and Miles had made the mistake of thinking I was just another suburban husband, too comfortable and complacent to fight back. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Sunday evening, my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the voice immediately. "We need to talk," Miles said without preamble. "Do we?" "I can't imagine what we'd have to discuss." "Cut the crap, Evan. I know you're behind what's happening to me." "Behind what? Your wife finding out about your affair? Your clients discovering you've been stealing from them? Your cocaine dealer going to the police?" I paused for effect. "I'm flattered that you think I have that kind of influence, but I'm just a simple engineer." "This isn't over." "You're right about that. It's barely started." The line went quiet for a moment. When Miles spoke again, his voice was different, smaller, more desperate. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand something," I said, settling back in my chair. "You thought you were playing games with an amateur. You thought I'd find out, get angry, maybe throw a punch or file for divorce like a civilized person. But here's the thing about engineers. We don't just fix problems. We solve them permanently." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm educating you. See, you and my wife made a fundamental error in judgment. You assumed I was weak because I was nice. You confused kindness with stupidity. And now you're learning the difference." Another pause. "What do you want?" he repeated. "I want you to disappear from my life. I want you to stay away from Lena. Not that she'll be much use to you now that you're both unemployed. And I want you to remember that everything you've lost, you lost because you couldn't keep your hands off another man's wife. You're crazy. Maybe. But I'm crazy with evidence, and you're sane with nothing. Guess which one of us is sleeping better at night." I hung up and immediately called Tom. "Richardson just called me," I said when he answered. "Figured he might. He's been making a lot of calls lately. Desperate man, desperate measures." "What kind of measures?" "The kind that involve private investigators and lawyers. He's trying to build a case against you for harassment." I laughed. "Good luck with that. Everything I've done is perfectly legal." "Legal, maybe, but he's not thinking clearly right now. Desperate people do stupid things." "Let him. I've got contingency plans for my contingency plans. Speaking of which, I've got some information for you. Richardson's been busier than we thought. The gambling debts are worse than you know, and he's got some very unfriendly creditors, the kind who don't send polite reminder notices." "How unfriendly?" "The kind who might be willing to share information about their debtor's personal life in exchange for certain considerations." I smiled. "Set up a meeting." Monday morning brought fresh entertainment. I was drinking coffee and reading the news when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Sandra Richardson. We should meet." Miles's wife. This was unexpected, but not unwelcome. I texted back, "When and where?" Her reply came immediately. "Starbucks on 5th Street, 1 hour." Sandra Richardson was smaller than I remembered, diminished somehow by the events of the past few days. She was sitting in a corner booth when I arrived, clutching a coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping her anchored to reality. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down across from her. "Thank you for reaching out. I wasn't sure you'd want to talk to me." She laughed bitterly. "A week ago, I wouldn't have. A week ago, I thought my husband was working late because he was dedicated to his clients. Turns out he was dedicated to your wife instead. I'm sorry. I know this isn't easy." "Easy?" She shook her head. 22 years of marriage, and I find out he's been cheating with a colleague while stealing from his clients to pay for their romantic dinners. Easy doesn't begin to cover it." I waited. Sometimes the best thing to do is let people talk. "I know you're the one who sent me those photos," she continued. "The bank records, the hotel receipts, all of it. I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't." She almost smiled. "But hypothetically, if someone had sent me that information, I'd want to thank them, and I'd want them to know that I have information of my own." Now she had my attention. "What kind of information?" Sandra reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. "Miles keeps files at home. Financial records, client information, personal correspondence. He thought I didn't know about his home office safe, but I've known the combination for years." She slid the envelope across the table. "There's enough in there to put him in prison for a very long time. Embezzlement, tax evasion, money laundering, the works." I picked up the envelope but didn't open it. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because I want him to pay for what he's done, not just to me, but to everyone he's hurt. His clients, his partners, your marriage, all of it." Her voice hardened. "And because I know you'll use it more effectively than I could." "What makes you think that?" "Because you've already destroyed his career and his reputation in less than a week. I'm curious to see what you can do with real ammunition." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception or hidden agenda. All I saw was a woman who'd been betrayed and was ready to fight back. "Hypothetically," I said, "if someone were to use this information, what would you want in return?" "Nothing. Just the satisfaction of knowing that justice was served." She stood up and gathered her purse. "Oh, and one more thing. Your wife called me yesterday." "She did?" "She wanted to apologize. Said she never meant for things to go so far, that she was sorry for the pain she'd caused." Sandra's smile was sharp as broken glass. "I told her she could take her apology and shove it where the sun doesn't shine." After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, reading through the documents she'd given me. If even half of this information was accurate, Miles Richardson wasn't just a cheating husband, he was a career criminal who'd been using his law practice as a front for money laundering and fraud. But the most interesting document was buried near the bottom of the stack. A handwritten note in Miles's distinctive scrawl dated just 3 weeks ago. "EM becoming suspicious. May need to accelerate timeline. L agrees. Says she can handle him. EM, Evan Mitchell. L, Lena." They'd been planning to handle me, like I was a problem to be managed, an obstacle to be removed. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd expected, not because it was surprising, but because it was so calculated. I folded the note carefully and put it in my wallet. Then I pulled out my phone and started making calls. The first call was to a reporter I knew at the local newspaper. The second was to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. The third was to Miles's biggest client, a construction company that had trusted him with millions in escrow accounts. By the time I finished, Miles Richardson's problems had grown exponentially. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Because now I knew that Lena hadn't just cheated on me, she'd actively participated in planning my humiliation. And that changed everything. The game was no longer about revenge, it was about total annihilation. Tuesday brought rain and reckoning in equal measure. I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages, all from numbers I didn't recognize. Word was spreading, and the vultures were circling. The first call I returned was from Jennifer Walsh, the reporter I'd contacted the day before. She sounded breathless with excitement. "Evan, this Richardson story is bigger than we thought. The FBI raided his office this morning, and we're hearing rumors about organized crime connections. Can you comment?" "No comment," I said, but I was smiling as I said it. "Come on, give me something. Off the record. Are you the source who brought this to light?" "I'm just a concerned citizen who believes in justice." She laughed. "Right. Well, your concerned citizenship just brought down one of the city's most prominent law firms. Richardson's been arrested, and the whole practice is under federal investigation." After I hung up, I poured myself coffee and settled in to watch the news coverage. Miles's arrest was the lead story on every local channel. The footage of him being led away in handcuffs was particularly satisfying. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of his own choices. But the real entertainment came from the man-on-the-street interviews. Everyone had an opinion about the fallen lawyer and his spectacular downfall. Several people mentioned rumors about an affair with a colleague, and one enterprising reporter had already tracked down information about Lena. My phone rang again. This time, it was Lena herself. "Evan, we need to talk," she said without preamble. Her voice sounded strained, desperate. "Do we? I thought you'd said everything you needed to say when you moved out. Please, this is important. Where are you?" "At my mother's. Can you meet me somewhere private?" I considered it. Part of me was curious to see how she was handling the collapse of her carefully constructed new life. Part of me wanted to twist the knife a little deeper. Fine. The old warehouse district near the river. You know the place. "Why there?" "Because it's private, like you wanted. 1 hour." The warehouse district had been abandoned for years, a collection of empty buildings and broken dreams left over from the city's industrial past. It was the perfect place for a final confrontation, isolated, atmospheric, and symbolic of everything that had crumbled in our lives. Lena was already there when I arrived, sitting in her car with the engine running. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, her face pale and drawn. The confident, polished woman I'd married had been replaced by someone who looked haunted. She got out of her car as I approached, wrapping her arms around herself against the chill. "Thank you for coming," she said. "What do you want, Lena?" "I want to explain. I want you to understand." "Understand what? That you and your boyfriend were planning to handle me? That you thought I was too stupid to figure out what you were doing?" Her face crumpled. "You saw the note." "I saw everything. The affair, the lies, the theft, the planning, all of it." I stepped closer, and she instinctively backed away. "But you know what hurts the most? It's not that you cheated. It's that you thought I was weak enough to just take it." "I never thought you were weak. You thought I was convenient. A reliable source of income and stability while you played house with someone more exciting." I laughed, and the sound echoed off the empty buildings around us. "Well, surprise. The convenient husband turned out to be inconvenient after all." Tears were streaming down her face now. "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But Miles is gone, his life is ruined, and I've lost everything. Isn't that enough?" "Enough?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. "This is the website for Channel 7 News. Your photo is right there on the front page, identified as the unnamed colleague who was having an affair with Miles Richardson. By tomorrow, everyone in the city will know your name." She stared at the screen in horror. "How did they—" "Get your photo, your employment history, your personal information." I put the phone away. "Amazing what you can accomplish with a little creativity and the right connections. You're destroying my life." "I'm revealing your life. There's a difference." Lena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing makeup across her cheek. "What do you want from me, Evan? What will it take to make this stop?" "Stop?" I looked around at the abandoned warehouses, the broken windows, the weeds growing through cracks in the pavement. "This isn't something that stops, Lena. This is consequences. This is what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness and assume there won't be a price to pay. I'll do anything. I'll sign whatever papers you want, give you whatever settlement. I don't want your money. I don't want your apologies. I don't want anything from you except for you to understand one simple truth." "What truth?" I stepped closer, close enough to see the fear in her eyes, close enough to smell the desperation on her breath. "You picked the wrong man to betray." The sound of car engines interrupted us. 3 vehicles were approaching, a black sedan, a white van, and Tom's familiar pickup truck. Lena spun around, panic written across her face. "What's happening? Who are those people?" "Witnesses," I said calmly. "See, I learned something important from your boyfriend's legal troubles. When you're planning to destroy someone's life, it's always good to have documentation." The vehicles stopped in a semicircle around us, and people began getting out. Tom emerged from his truck, followed by 2 men with cameras. The sedan disgorged Jennifer Walsh and another reporter I recognized from the competing newspaper. The van revealed a crew from the local television station. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, "I'd like you to meet Lena Mitchell, formerly Lena Patterson. She's the woman who was having an affair with Miles Richardson while he embezzled money from his clients." Cameras started clicking. Video cameras started rolling. Lena looked around wildly, like a trapped animal searching for an escape route that didn't exist. "Evan, please." "Mrs. Mitchell," Jennifer Walsh called out, "can you comment on your relationship with Miles Richardson? Did you know about his illegal activities?" "No comment," Lena stammered, backing toward her car. "Is it true that you used company credit cards to pay for hotel rooms?" another reporter asked. "Did you participate in the money laundering scheme?" a third voice added. Lena reached her car and fumbled with the door handle, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip it. I have nothing to say. This is harassment. Actually, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, this is justice. This is what happens when you think you can lie and cheat and steal without consequences. She finally got the car door open and threw herself inside. The engine started with a roar, and she peeled out of the parking area, leaving rubber and dignity behind in equal measure. The reporters turned to me, questions flying like bullets. Mr. Mitchell, how long did you know about the affair? What evidence do you have of financial impropriety? Are you planning to file for divorce? I held up my hand for silence. I'll make one statement, and then I'm done talking about this. The cameras focused on me, and I felt a strange calm settle over my shoulders. This was it, the moment I'd been building toward since the night I discovered Lena's betrayal. My wife chose to have an affair with a man who was stealing from his clients. She chose to lie to me, to steal from our joint accounts, and to plan my humiliation with her lover. She thought I would be too weak, too comfortable, too afraid to fight back. I looked directly into the nearest camera. She was wrong. What's next for you, Mr. Mitchell? Jennifer asked. Next, I'm going to rebuild my life without the people who tried to destroy it, and I'm going to sleep very well at night, knowing that justice was served. I walked back to my car, leaving the reporters to chase after other stories and other scandals. Behind me, I could hear them already discussing angles and headlines, turning the collapse of my marriage into entertainment for the masses. But I didn't care. The game was over, and I'd won more decisively than I'd ever imagined possible. Miles Richardson was facing federal charges that would likely put him in prison for decades. His law practice was finished, his reputation destroyed, his marriage over. The man who'd thought he could steal my wife and my dignity had lost everything that mattered to him. Lena was unemployed, unemployable, and publicly humiliated. Her legal career was finished before it had really begun, her social circle had abandoned her, and her family was ashamed to be associated with her. The woman who'd thought she deserved better than me had discovered that better was a luxury she could no longer afford. And me, I was free. Free from lies, free from betrayal, free from the weight of a marriage that had become a prison. The house was mine, the money was mine, and most importantly, the future was mine to shape however I wanted. As I drove home through the rain, I thought about the man I'd been just a few weeks ago. Trusting, forgiving, willing to overlook flaws and make excuses for the people I loved. That man was gone, replaced by someone harder and smarter and infinitely more dangerous. Some people might call what I'd done cruel. Others might say it was excessive. But I knew the truth that they didn't understand. Sometimes the only way to stop being a victim is to become the villain. Em and I'd played the villain better than anyone could have imagined. The rain was still falling when I pulled into my driveway, but the storm in my life had finally passed. I sat in the car for a moment, looking at the house that was now truly mine, and smiled. Game over. I won.